Chapter 2150. The Discovery of Her Low Profile. Di Fui was lucky that it was only a wound. The bleeding stopped very quickly. Concerned about Gu Shijio, Di Fui turned his hand, which was holding hers, around and observed her hand instead. "Are you hurt at all?" Gu Shijio did not let go of his hand. "No," she reassured him. "I am sorry," she said hesitantly. Had I not moved 2 steps forward, it would not be agitated, and you would not be hurt." Gu Shijio was still in remorse for what she had done. Di Fui took a breath and caressed her hair gently. "Silly, do you really enjoy taking responsibility for everything? Even if you stood still, it would still see you and go into the same rampage. Perhaps the attack would come later, but the consequence would remain the same." Gu Shijio was astonished. Why did it have a grudge against me? Di Fui was equally confused. Chaos was especially triggered when it saw Gu Shijio, like a resentment that it had from a past insult. "Perhaps you have once defeated it in its original form?" He made a guess. She could not believe that she once possessed such great strengths. It was only a guess. He sighed. After all, they did not grow up together. Before he was born, she was already taking over the world by storm. But if she had defeated chaos, was it a beast from heaven? Gu Shijio blinked her eyes in apparent confusion. "I can see that chaos is such a magnificent beast. If I really had defeated it, I would definitely have told you about it, since we were close, right?" Gu Shijio knew that she would definitely brag about the achievement to her own fiancé. Di Fui placed his hand on her shoulder before reassuring, "Shijio, you used to carry a very low profile." Gu Shijio was surprised by the discovery. Di Fui refused to continue the discussion in order to prevent the revelation of more weak points to his position. Swiftly he changed the subject. "All right, chaos is now asleep. It will continue to do so for another 4 hours. After that, the barrier will close again. We have to bring the others out." Gu Shijio was utterly surprised. They only had 4 hours to escape. Di Fui was indeed successful in changing the topic as Gu Shijio no longer thought about the question about her past behavior. She was a woman of action, so she wanted them to move quickly. "What are we waiting for? Let's go." Quickly, she used her teleportation and carried them away. They did not have much time, so they had to get everyone out soon. As for the situation of the valley that was beyond the barrier, she did not have time to check it. At this moment, she could only do one thing at a time. The people in the clan were prepared for their return. Upon seeing them, they cheered in high spirits. Then, they followed their array formation and exited the cave in an orderly manner. Over the past century, these people had spent most of their lives there. Most of them were actually born there. Although the living conditions were harsh, they were still saddened by the fact that they were leaving the place. Before they left, some emotional villagers were already crying. The heartfelt farewell continued to affect everyone's emotion. The sense of attachment was not helpful to the battle that they were about to face. Hence, the clan leader quickly motivated them. "You haven't seen the outside world, have you? The world out there is very beautiful, with a city full of buildings and the streets filled with bustling businesses. There, you can eat whatever you want and wear whatever you wish. We can finally establish our new lives in peace. Our children can finally run around in the city safely." Chapter 2151. For a better future, they would do all they could. They will be able to go to school and learn new things. Unlike our lives here, there is no sense of security. We don't even know if we are going to live another day with enough food. When we finally settle down in the city, you may come back here to have a visit in your free time. The clan leader's motivation worked well in lifting their spirits. All of them were instantly full of vigor. For their children and for a better future, they would do all they could. They had made a thorough plan in advance. They left according to how they had planned it. The elders, the women, and the children would be walking in the middle. The fighters would surround the group to provide protection. Di Fui and Gu Shijio would be taking the lead. Tai Dan and Tai Nyo, along with the rest of the strongest men in the clan, would be at the tail. The large group of people had triggered the emergence of the phantom beasts. Fortunately, only 1 or 2 beasts appeared. At most, there would only be 4 beasts at the same time, not a huge swarm. As long as they killed the beasts right at the start of their formation, they would not be a problem anymore. Some of the beasts they encountered were exceptionally brutal, but they were outnumbered. As soon as the beasts approached, the men would fight them to prevent the unarmed villagers from getting hurt. Gu Shijiao and Di Fui would then coordinate to kill the beasts instantly. The journey was threatening, but not exactly dangerous. The distance from the cave to the outskirts of the valley was about 20 miles away. With teleportation, Gu Shijiao could cover the entire journey in about 8 minutes. Some of these people knew basic kung fu, and if they ran without any obstruction, they would take about half an hour to complete the journey. As for the elders, the women, and the children, they made up the majority of the clan, so their slow speed had certainly affected the progress of the entire group. Furthermore, their encounters with various beasts only made things worse. After 2 hours, the group could only cover half of the journey, but the good news was that no man was left behind. Nonetheless, Gu Shijiao started to worry. If they continued to travel at the same speed, chaos would already be awake even before they made it to the wizardry barrier. However, she also knew that they were already trying their best to travel quickly. Unless they decided to abandon the elderly and the disabled, the entire group would not be able to make it out alive. Hence, Gu Shijiao wondered if there were any ways to improve their progress. Fui, can you put people into your storage space? Gu Shijiao suddenly recalled the existence of his storage space. She was hoping to carry the 8 elders in the space, for they were the slowest ones in the group. It does not work that way. The storage space can only carry non-living things. It is a vacuum in there. The elders would die due to a lack of oxygen. Gu Shijiao was not happy with the answer. Fortunately, another idea came to her mind. She could teleport with 2 persons at a time. Then, she would come back and carry another 2 with her. However, the idea was dejected by Di Fui as soon as she proposed it. Each teleportation covers 2 or 3 miles of the journey. Along the way, there will be phantom beasts everywhere. If you leave them alone while you turn back, they will most probably end up being eaten by the beasts while you are away. Gu Shijiao tried to think of a few other solutions, but all of them were rejected due to some flaws here and there. Shijiao, under the current circumstance, we must sacrifice the elders. There are not many, only 8 of them. Otherwise, more than half of the people here will die. Di Fui was the most rational, but also the most cold-blooded person. The way he analyzed things was very sharp and yet brutal. He noticed that there were only 8 elders who slowed down the entire group, 2 men and 6 women. Chapter 2152. The Great Escape. Gu Shijiao could not agree with Di Fui's suggestion. No way. She understood that it was the best solution, but she could not simply leave them here to die. The elders had been very kind to her. Whenever there was something nice to eat or wear, they would definitely keep it for her. Lovingly, they treated her like she was one of their own. The entire clan respected them. These elders were desperate to make it out and see the world out there too. If she really abandoned them, they would not survive on their own. Gu Shijiao took a breath and answered firmly, "Let's think of some other way." Di Fui absolutely understood her concerns, so he agreed. "All right, we shall try other ways." While they were having the discussion, a loud, doleful cry could be heard. The sound was a little childlike but was equally prominent. Gu Zijia's expression changed abruptly. Tightly, she held onto her sword and warned, "The leader of the beasts has emerged." Dozens of phantom beasts appeared and lunged towards the people in a well-arranged formation. All the men quickly went into a violent battle. In an instant, it was all very chaotic. There were bawling sounds, howls of the beasts, quick footsteps, and some helpless screaming. Di Fui pulled Gu Shijiao aside and suggested, "We should kill the leader of the beasts. Take me there." The leader of the beasts was able to summon and gather other beasts into a large swarm. Once triggered, it would attract hundreds of phantom beasts. By then, they would lose all control of their current defensive situation. They had to kill the leader of the beasts before things went haywire. Gu Shijiao knew how severe it could turn out to be. Fortunately, from the sound of its howling, Gu Shijiao could already tell where it was located. She only had to take Di Fui there. "All right," she agreed. Then, she turned around and informed the men, "We are going after the leader of the beasts. You have to carry out the defense on your own for a while." "Sure." They answered in unison. Gu Shijio left the group and teleported along with Di Fui miles away towards the direction of northwest. The leader of the beasts was hiding there. As soon as they left, the villagers had to face the phantom beasts on their own. Like before, the men could handle 1 or 2 beasts at a time. However, with dozens of them, the battle became a difficult one. The beasts were obviously trained to attack by choosing the weakest group of people. Tai Dan, Tai Nyo, and their men were filled with indignation. They stuck together to face the attack. Violently, they fought the beasts with no reserve. Fortunately, Di Fui had taught them a formation beforehand to help them defend themselves in all directions during an incoming attack. So far, they continued to hold their positions. To their surprise, one of the phantom beasts could fly. It dove straight towards the center group of people. Swiftly, it avoided the swords from the circle of armed men. There were the elders, the women, and the children in the center. Obviously, they were not prepared for the unforeseen circumstance. In a wave of helpless screams, the phantom beast was about to attack a small child in the group. Before its claws managed to scratch the child's head, an elder quickly ran across and lunged forward to cover the child's body under his. The beast's claws penetrated straight through the old man's back. The armed men were still fighting the incoming beasts. Occupied, none of them could leave their positions to save those in the middle. In all stresses and strains, the phantom beast suddenly attacked another child. "Our death is nothing. We have to save the child." The old man on the ground pleaded weakly. Thus, another old man chose to sacrifice his life to save the child. He died under the claws of the beast. People continued to scream in distress. Tai Dan could no longer bear to see the same situation occur. He was about to leave his position and help those in need. Chapter 2153, The Great Escape, 2. We should leave the array and attract their attention. "All right, old man. We shall fight them until our last breaths." The rest of the elders were synchronized. Simultaneously, they took their iron rods and aimed them at the phantom beasts. At their age, their strength would do no harm to the beasts. Instead, they only managed to trigger the beasts even further. In a rage, the particularly beast they attacked was going to kill them. "Now!" In a mess, a voice could be heard making a sudden command. It was obviously a signal. Together, the 6 elders pushed the younger men who were fighting in the front line apart and rushed out of the group. Tai Dan and his men had never expected that the elders would make their sudden exit. With no time to spare, they could only watch as the elders ran further and further into the distance. The beasts on the outside were unable to break through the formation and were desperate. Upon seeing the elders approaching, they switched their target and aimed at them instead. The crowd was utterly shocked. Some young men wanted to follow the elders regardless. "Grandpa! Grandma!" Gu Shijio saw what happening, but her hands were tied in the battle with the leader of the beasts. By its side, there were another 2 massive phantom beasts that served as its guardians. They had not been able to get close enough to kill it. As soon as she heard the sudden rise of chaos, she quickly turned around to check it out. That was when she first saw an elder being hunted down by a beast. Caught in a shock, her arm was almost slashed by one of the beasts that she was currently fighting. The elders were slow, and the beasts were moving very quickly. Not long after they left the group, they were all brutally killed by the beasts. Their last voices echoed. "Don't come here. Stone, take the children out. Our deaths will not be in vain. Stone, please take care of them." Their last words hung in the air. Tears started to roll in Gu Zijia's eyes. Di Fuya's heart was equally moved. He knew that the 8 elders were the slowest ones in the group. Judging from their synchronized actions, it was obviously something they had planned. They took the opportunity to sacrifice themselves. Firstly, they did so to ease the stress of the younger men in the battle. Secondly, they did not wish to delay the progress anymore. Di Fui was not very emotionally attached to the people. He only agreed to save the clan because of Gu Shijio. Without any emotions for them, he could easily make the most rational decision to find the most suitable solution. However, to witness the sacrifice came as a shock to him as well. He finally understood why Gu Shijio insisted on saving each and every one of their lives. 5 minutes later, the leader of the beasts was killed. Swiftly, they returned and killed other beasts. As for the 8 elders, their pieces of flesh and bones remained on the ground. The clan leader collected some of their bones. Some of the people in the group started sobbing. Almost everyone was equally affected by the tragedy. Gu Shijio took a deep breath and gave Di Fui a stern look. Di Fui froze momentarily upon seeing the iciness in her eyes. Then, Gu Shijio turned to look at the group of people. She was sad too, but it was not the time to show it. I promised to take everyone out of here. She did not cry, but her eyes were obviously red. I will not leave anyone behind, she said firmly. That is right. No one will be left behind. All of them agreed. Furiously, they clenched their fists tightly in response. The group continued their journey. Only this time, the progress was much better. Almost everyone was running. The leader of the beasts would only appear once a day. Therefore, after its death, they did not encounter any phantom beasts anymore. Gu Shijio continued to take the lead, acting calm like she was unaffected by the death of the elders. When Di Fui stood beside her, he suddenly realized that her hands were icy cold. Chapter 2154, The Great Escape, 3. Di Fui could not help but think that this must be the biggest amount of lost lives that Gu Shijio had witnessed in recent months. She must be having a difficult time right now. The pain in her heart must be unbearable. He wanted to hold her hand, but she flicked his hand away as soon as he approached her. Shocked, he looked at her, but she did not look back. Instead, she kept a distance from him. Di Fui did not know what to say. He pinched his mouth into a tight line in bewilderment. Did she think that the elder's death had anything to do with his previous suggestion? Did they choose to sacrifice their lives because they had heard what he told her? He did not use directed audio when they had the conversation because he wanted to reserve his energy for better purposes. He already tried to lower his voice as much as he could, however. Did the 8 elders still hear him? Was that the reason? While they were on their journey, he tried to hold her hand again. I am sorry, he apologized in a deep voice. Gu Shijio halted her steps. It is not your fault, she answered. She took a deep breath before continuing in a trembling voice. I am only angry that my kung fu is not any better. If her kung fu were strong enough, she would be able to work independently with Di Fui. She would have been able to protect the innocent lives. Now, she was mostly dependent on Di Fui for his support. There was a sense of guilt in his eyes. If it were not for his frequent act of compelling her into a relationship in the upper bound, she would not have revealed the heavenly secret. She certainly would not have ended up here for all this suffering. Moreover, she would not have lost all of her spiritual power and be doomed to become a mortal being. Shijio, I will protect these people with you. He gave her a quick, tight hug and made the promise. Frozen momentarily in his embrace, she finally nodded firmly. All right. About an hour later, they finally arrived at the edge of the wizardry barrier. It was an entrance to the valley. The area used to be covered by the layer of red fog, so they could not see through the fog to know how it really looked like. The clan leader had a multitude of feelings surge up upon seeing the view of the mountains, with shapes protruding like fangs from afar. A century ago, he followed the men in the hunt as a child and entered the valley. After all this time, he was finally leaving the place. How would the outside world look like? No one knew. However, there was hope for a better world as long as they could make it out alive. The surroundings of the valley were still filled with the layer of red fog. However, there was a clear path that could lead them miles away to safety without any foggy intervention. Nevertheless, on each side, the red fog could be seen slowly closing in. Apparently, the entrance was closing up again. Run fast but orderly, Gu Shijio commanded. When the last man escaped, the red fog finally sealed the path again. No one could see the path from which they came. The clan leader finally heaved a sigh of relief. He did not quite know how to feel as he stared at the layer of red fog fixedly. They finally made it out. After a century of being trapped, They finally made it beyond the red fog alive. The rest of the clan was excited by the view of the outside world. Although they were still deeply moved by the death of the 8 elders, the newfound freedom could at least ease the pain in their heart. After clearing the valley, they came by a hill. After the hell they had been through, they would come to a pathway in the mountains that could lead them all the way out to civilization. The valley was filled with an abundance of rocks. There was hardly any green anywhere. It was usually covered in different shades of gray. However, life was thriving in vivid green on the hill. Many kinds of flower blossomed in many colors everywhere. They had been running for their lives for quite a long while. Now that they were safe, they finally felt a sense of relief. Some suggested that they should take a rest on the hill. Many agreed. The journey had been a very exhausting one. They desperately needed rest to eat something and regain their energy. Chapter 2155. The Great Escape. 4. Gu Shijio was also exhausted. Along the way, she had used her teleportation skill so many times and was even involved in a series of battles. At this very moment, she could feel that her legs were weak. However, she dared not take a rest like everyone else. They were new to the place, so no one could be sure that there was no incoming danger. She wanted to send a few men out in different directions and secure the perimeter but was quickly interrupted by Di Fui. He sat her down on a big rock and said, "You should sit down and have a rest. I will take care of it." Gu Shijio noticed his fairly pale complexion. "There is no need for that. You should rest while I check the place out." Her eyes then swept across the hill as she said, "The place may not be too safe. We should take a break for only an hour. After that, we should resume our journey. The next stop for rest will be in the city. Tai Dan, you will guard the southern side. Tai Nyo, you will take the northern side." After a series of commands, these men took the orders and spread to their respective positions. Their preparation was sufficient, so things moved swiftly. All of them had water and food supplies with them. The food that they had was only grilled meat. Furthermore, they only ate when it was absolutely necessary due to the limited supply. Suddenly, someone recalled Di Fui's promise. "Mr. Di, you told us that you would give us the dishes you had given to Gu Shijio once we made it out alive." Yes, Mr. Di has promised us so." The discussion continued. These people continued in chatter to lighten the atmosphere. But not all of us survived. Grandpa Tai Shu, someone had to dampen their spirits. Grandpa Tai Shu was one of the elders who chose to die in the valley for the general good. At the thought of the death of the elders, the chatter slowly faded, and the atmosphere became gloomy again. Di Fui took a look at the sad faces in front of him and proceeded to take out something from his storage space. In his hand, there was a small bag. The crowd was astonished. Could all the dishes be stored in this small, seemingly useless bag? It seemed impossible. It was indeed impossible. Instead of the dishes, Di Fui took out some fruits from the bag. There were peaches, pears, and plums. There were more than 100 pieces of fruits, and he gave them all to the clan leader and said, "Distribute the fruits to them." These people had never seen fruits all their lives, so most of them did not know what he had passed to the clan leader. The clan leader knew what the fruits were, however. He thanked him for the gift and passed the fruits to a few honest men to distribute to the villagers. Each person can have one. The children will have 2. The fruits tasted sweet and refreshing. It was something that the villagers had never tasted in their entire lives. Most started to enjoy it after the first bite. The children were obviously happy and screaming in excitement. They placed the fruits carefully in their hands and took careful bites. The crowd was happy again. These people were still grateful for Di Fui. Without him, they would not be able to make it out alive. Before the journey out, most of them had never seen him in a battle with the phantom beasts. They finally had the chance to witness his strength on the journey and were thoroughly impressed. There was a look of admiration in their eyes. On a rock, Di Fui sat and closed his eyes to take a short rest. He was even more exhausted than the rest of the group. After all, he was the one who took the lead in every battle with the phantom beasts. Furthermore, it was not that long ago that he even encountered Chaos, the great beast. His spiritual power had been greatly depleted throughout the day, and his arms and legs were getting weak. Someone sat down next to him. He opened his eyes and saw another pair of bright eyes staring back at him. He frowned. Quietly, he shifted away. He was not used to having someone get too close to him. He resisted the urge to push the woman far away only because she is a friend of Gu Shijio. Chun Chao was very enthusiastic at that moment. She tapped Di Fuya's shoulder and complimented, "Mr. D, you have done great. From now on, I will never call you a weak man." Chapter 2156. Is this a custom from heaven? Di Fui flicked her hand away and said nonchalantly, "I do not care what you say or think." Chun Chao was shocked by his sudden resentment. Di Fui adjusted his robes gently before giving her another look in the eye. A girl should not get too close to her good friend's man, he warned. Chun Chao was taken by surprise. Was this a custom from heaven? Nonetheless, she nodded firmly. All right." Di Fui did not say anything further. Instead, he looked at her, as if trying to tell her to go away. His intense gaze terrified Chun Chao. She touched her nose out of awkwardness and left. She was going for Gu Shijio this time. The man was good at everything except socializing. He could not join the group, as he was obviously not one of them. Given his attitude, the people were not sure if the man would take advantage of Brother Stone. They wanted to have a chat with Di Fui, but the idea faded when they saw Chun Chao's unfortunate rejection. They dared not take another step closer. Di Fui closed his eyes again to take another quick rest. He started to meditate. After a long day, his spiritual power was reduced by a great amount. He thought that in a short, quiet rest he would be able to feel his power growing back. However, it was not the case. Every decrease in his level of spiritual power seemed irreversible. His spiritual power was at a new low with no sign of recovery. Earlier, he wanted to open the box in his storage bag to take some dishes out for the group, but he only managed to open a small opening. He could not take the box, so he could only reach out for the small bag that carried the fruits. He could use his spiritual power to open the storage bag forcibly, but he did not want to spend his remaining spiritual power on this unnecessary act. It was already in the evening. The hill was windy with a clear sky. The air was filled with the refreshing scent of the greens around them. The surroundings were completely different from the valley that was constantly shielded under a dark, gray layer of haze. But there was one thing in common: there was no spiritual power in the air at all. Di Fui had been to the underworld, which was said to have the worst condition out of all existing worlds. It was known to be a place with a scarce amount of spiritual power. As long as he meditated with special techniques, he could still source a large supply of spiritual power from the surroundings to fill in the gaps in his body. However, there was no spiritual power at all in his current location. Logically speaking, all the lives here, including the plants, had a spirit. As long as there were spirits, there would be spiritual power. This was a matter of fact that even God could not alter. In the valley, there was an explanation for the lack of spiritual power. But why would the outside world be just the same? Was there any special channel to absorb the spiritual power of this particular world? Was there any problem with his meditation? He took at the Kan leader who was sitting on a rock and trying to meditate as well. The way he did it was a little different from him. He pointed a finger at the sky and another to the earth. He did not sit with his legs crossed. Instead, he sat with his feet facing each other. After a short while, his fingers started to tremble. Soon, he opened his eyes, only to be surprised by Di Fui's presence. Di Fui was staring at him from the top of another rock, not too far away. "Mr. D," he greeted while trying to stand up. "Have you extracted any spiritual power?" Di Fui asked frankly. The clan leader hesitated a little and shook his head in disappointment. "There is no spiritual power here." His face was grave as he told Di Fui. "Something is not right. There used to be spiritual power here? Yes, I did take a short rest here on the hill back in the days. There used to be an abundance of spiritual power, unlike now. Did the red fog absorb all of the spiritual power here because the place is too close to the Forbidden Land?" The clan leader tried to find the best explanation. Chapter 2157. Finally, you want to talk to me? Di Fui squinted at the clan leader's comment. He thought that this matter was not that simple. What identity did you have before you entered the valley and got trapped? The old patriarch was shocked. He did not expect Di Fui to ask this question. Huh. Di Fui quietly stared at him and did not speak. The old patriarch was nervous under Di Fui's intense gaze. He sighed. Why did you ask this question? I need to know the truth. He knew too little about this world, so he needed to increase his knowledge. The old patriarch was the only one who survived among the trapped people. Although he looked like everyone else, Di Fui had sharp eyes that could identify that he was different from the others. For example, other people were rougher, and the way they talked was more direct merely because they did have an adequate education. The old patriarch's speech was somewhat literary, and his style of work also had a demeanor of a nobleman. Obviously, he had been well educated. Di Fui's inquiry clearly evoked the memories of the old patriarch. He sighed and said, Actually, there is nothing to hide. I was once the son of the owner of Luo Hua City. During the time, I came here for hunting with a few friends and some family servants. However, I didn't expect that. He did not expect to be trapped and forced to be rooted in this place. Fortunately, when they came hunting, they brought a lot of female servants. After being trapped, many of them were married and had kids. Gradually, they developed into a village. However, the maids they brought were not highly educated and did not even know how to read. This carried on to the next generation. Most of them were trained to hunt as their primary job. As a result, after they had developed for centuries, their descendants had lived like the primitive. Di Fui sized him up. What level of spiritual power had you achieved before you were trapped? Level 6. The old patriarch sighed. He was considered a master in the past, and that was the reason he could become the clan leader. How much spiritual power do you have now? Nothing at all. Did the aristocrats in the Luo Hua city often come to this mountain to hunt? Yes, in the past, this place was full of majestic beings. Everyone hunted majestic beings and used it for their own use. This mountain was the hunting grounds of the noblemen. Di Fui wandered around this place. The old patriarch looked at him and did not know what he was looking for. Gu Shijio also studied the terrain nearby, to ensure that no dangerous beasts were lurking. When she saw Di Fui wandering around, she paused and went over. What are you looking for? Why aren't you resting? Di Fui looked at her quietly for a moment. Finally, you want to talk to me? Gu Shijio was speechless. Because of the death of the 8 elders, she felt guilty in her heart. She was upset with Di Fui because she felt that he was the reason that they decided to sacrifice themselves. Although rationally she understood that she should not blame Di Fui, emotionally, she felt a bit irritated and did not want to talk to him. Besides, she also knew that Di Fui was exhausted and needed to rest, so she ran away and arranged other things. Chapter 2158. Was she treating him like a child? Gu Shijio thought that her coldness was just a small matter and that Di Fui might not be able to sense it. However, she did not expect this person to be extraordinarily sensitive, and also a bit arrogant. It made Gu Shijio dumbfounded. I have always wanted to talk to you. I just thought that you should rest more and meditate. You cared about me? Of course. Gu Shijio had taken the time to calm down and clear up her mind, so the grievances in her heart had almost disappeared. Di Fui raised his hand and held her hand to pull her closer to his side. Can you stay with me when I rest? Gu Shijio looked at his slightly pale face. She felt somewhat distressed but also thought that it was rather humorous. Do you actually need me to accompany you to rest? Are you a kid? Di Fui replied, Well, then I will go and rest alone. You can go ahead with your things. He let go of her hand, turned and left. Gu Shijio was speechless. She was just joking, but she felt like she had stepped on his tail. She looked at his back and could tell from his body language that he was disappointed. She went forward and spoke, Oh, okay, I will accompany you to rest. She comfortably grabbed his hand and patted it. Don't be angry, okay? Di Fui was speechless. Was this girl treating him like a kid? He glanced at her from the side and felt as though she was comforting her wife. It seemed like she had been deep-rooted as a man. Di Fuyi's eyes flashed slightly as he circled her waist with one of his arms to hug her. Let's go. The old patriarch looked at the Di Fuyi with a confused look. He thought that after Di Fuyi had questioned him, that he would be able to find out something and discuss it with him. He certainly did not expect Di Fuyi to leave with his fiancée. He watched Di Fuyi and Gu Shijio rest on a big rock. The man then pulled her to lean on his shoulder. Come and rest. Look at your tired little face. Let them do the guarding. Even if you are the leader, you don't have to do everything. Gu Shijio was really tired. At this moment, when she leaned on his shoulder, she felt warm and comfortable. However, she still wondered, I thought that you would take out a bed to rest. Di Fuyi was stunned, and then he raised his hand to pat her hair. Stupid, we should not enjoy such luxury in front of so many people. Otherwise, people would think that you are just showing off. If you think that the rock is too hard, you can sit on my lap and let me hug you. Gu Shijio was speechless for a moment. Later, she firmly refused. No, leaning on each other will do. Therefore, they both leaned on each other to rest. The old patriarch could not help but watch the couple. He sat down somewhere nearby and frowned. He wanted to go over and talk to Di Fuyi, but he did not want to disturb the pair of lovebirds. Gu Shijio was really tired. She had forced herself to arrange all the events of the day. At this moment, when she leaned on Di Fuyi and ate a fruit he gave, she fell asleep quickly without knowing it. After eating and drinking, the rest of the people also rested, except for those who were on duty to guard the place. Suddenly, the hillside went quiet. About an hour later, the old patriarch was eager to head to the city. He stood up and wanted to wake the people up to continue the journey. Di Fuyi suddenly opened his eyes and waved at him. Consequently, the old patriarch walked over. The few words that Di Fuyi subsequently said made the old patriarch's heart almost sink into the abyss. Chapter 2159. I am going with you. The outside world is not a happy land, it has changed. This place is the buffer zone, so let everyone rest more. We can depart again at dawn. The old patriarch was stunned for a moment. How? How do you know? Di Fuyi calmly said, since this mountain was a place where the nobles had been hunting, there must be people who often maintain it. Besides, you were the son of the owner of Luohua City. If you suddenly disappeared, the city owner would definitely send people to come and find you. Even if they can't enter into the red fog area, they should at least search around this hillside. However, I just looked around, and there were only traces of human activities 100 years ago. No one has come to this place for around 100 years. There are only two possibilities for this kind of situation. The first is that drastic external changes have made this place worse than the red fog blockade area, and human beings have become extinct. Second, human beings have not gone extinct, but their range of activities has not been able to reach here. His analysis was reasonable, and the old patriarch could not counter it. Di Fuyi was right. This place used to be quite prosperous. There was a bustling station built by Luohua City along the way. There were often young noblemen who came here to hunt, so there should be signs of human activity in this place. In the past, when they were trapped, they had hoped that the city owners would send people to rescue them. Unfortunately, nothing happened. He thought that those who were sent were blocked by the red fog and could not enter the valley. He never expected that they could not even reach this hillside. It seemed that the outside world was not as beautiful as they thought, and it had changed dramatically. What would be the significant changes? The old patriarch's fists clenched as he looked at Di Fuyi. What can we do now? Everyone is tired. You all can take a break here first. I will go out and take a look. I will go to Luohua City first, and we can decide later. I am going with you. Gu Shijio, who had been leaning on Di Fuyi, suddenly opened her eyes. It seemed like she was awake for some time. Di Fuyi refused. No, I am just going to explore. You stay here and take care of the villagers. Since the situation is unknown, there might be an attack during this period. The old patriarch also said, Shijio, Mr. D is right. You should stay here to deal with any unexpected events. Gu Shijio stood up. There will be nothing unexpected here. I have already searched the area, and there has been no trace of any beast activity in recent times. Of course, there are no signs of human activity too. This place should be safe for the time being. It is enough to have Tai Dan and the rest to stay. On the contrary, the outside world could be hazardous. If he went out alone, he might be in danger. Thus, it would be better for me to go together with him. At a crucial time, she could use her teleportation technique to save his life. Di Fui could not help but look at her. He did not expect her to have checked the surroundings so thoroughly when she appeared to be leisurely taking a stroll earlier. Although she lost her memory and martial arts ability, her sixth sense was still extremely sensitive, and her style of work had not changed much. Gu Shijio felt very fortunate that they did not bring the whole team together in this period, or else they would all be dead. The sky was covered with thick clouds. Flowers, grass, and trees had grown everywhere, and the beasts were rampant. The weeds were long and tall, and the shrubs that used to be at the height of their waists had now grown into towering trees here. The trees here were strange. All the branches had expanded toward the direction of the sky. Chapter 2160. Cooperation. Di Fui saw a willow which had branches that were like the hair of a woman being blown up by the wind. However, the scenery on the ground was not covered by the trees. If one looked up, they could still see the sky, stars, and moon. The two finally found the so-called bustling station that they looked for. The road there was made of stone. It was flat and firm, and it could definitely carry carriages on it. However, it had now been filled with thorns and weeds, and the whole place was hidden in the mountains and jungle. Gu Shijio had to pull out a lot of grass before she was able to see the road. Of course, in the process of pulling, they also encountered 3 leopards, 2 tigers, and 1 bear. These animals were extremely fierce, but they were still not strong enough to defeat Di Fui and Gu Shijio. The two of them could easily take the animals down. Di Fui dragged a tiger over to check it. His lips pressed together into a thin line. "What's wrong?" Gu Shijio went close to him. Di Fui took a deep breath. "There is no spiritual power in them. Should they have it?" Di Fui answered, "Everything is spiritual. They are supposed to have spiritual power." Gu Shijio frowned. "I heard from the old patriarch that this world has spiritual power. I always thought that the outside world would have it. Is there something that sucked all the spiritual power of the world?" Di Fui pondered for a while and said, "There is always a natural spiritual power generated by the sky and the earth. If the power was being sucked out, it could still be regenerated. However, I still can't sense it until now. I guess there must be some mechanism or wizardry barrier that is constantly draining the spiritual power away." While both of them were talking, a big python emerged and rushed toward them. The big eyes of the python were both red like lanterns. It rushed fiercely to both of them as if it had a deep hatred toward the two. Di Fui frowned as he pulled Gu Shijio behind him. He whispered, "Don't take its life yet." "Okay." Gu Shijio also pulled out her sword from the sheath. Although the big python was fierce, it was also not equal to these two people. After a while, the body of the big python had already been cut by both of them. It was 7 or 8 feet long, and the giant python was at least 500 years old. It should be a semi-demon. By right, this kind of python should already be very intellectual. It should be smart enough to realize that it was not the opponent of Gu Shijio and Di Fui. A regular python would have fled. However, this python entangled with them indefinitely and had no plan to run away. When Di Fui felt that the timing was almost right, he ended the python's life with his sword. Both of them were a little breathless, but after a quick break Di Fui asked Gu Shijio, "What can you see?" Gu Shijio said, "These beasts are very reckless and irrational. They attack anyone and will not stop until they are dead. Yes, they are very reckless. I had observed them just now." The two shared their opinions while sitting on a branch. Gu Shijio looked up at the round moon in the sky. "I don't know if they are all like this during the day and night or only at night. I somehow feel that this moon is a bit strange." Was the moon strange? Di Fui also looked at the moon. The moon was as big as a disc and was golden. There was a cloud floating around it. It was a very typical night under the moonlight. He could not see any strange. Suddenly, he thought of something, and his fingers that were holding his sword were tightened. Chapter 2161. Cooperation 2. Di Fui finally realized what went wrong. The night they came out, the moon was not round. However, it was now a full moon. A full moon could make animals excited and reckless. Even some people from the monster kingdom could not get rid of this kind of curse. For example, the werewolf family could generally keep their human appearance under normal circumstances. However, when it was a full moon, they could easily be violent and bloodthirsty and ultimately turn into wolves. The man turned his head and asked Gu Shijio, "Is there supposed to be a full moon today?" Gu Shijio shook her head. "No. Today is the first day of the lunar calendar. It is not supposed to be a full moon." Did the old patriarch mention before that the timing outside is different? No, the old patriarch actually brought an hourglass with him when he came out to hunt and got trapped. He made sure that the time was synchronized with the outside world. Di Fui frowned slightly. He had some knowledge about the Shura world and knew that the moon worked the same as the ordinary world. It seems that this moon has a problem. Gu Shijio remained silent. It was still all right if other things went wrong. How does one fix the moon? The moon may not be the real reason. Perhaps there is some kind of power that changed the magnetic field of the Shura world. We can investigate it after we get out. Di Fui shook his head. "Do not worry, you have me for everything." Gu Shijio felt warm in her heart and let out a sigh of relief. "I am thinking about what we should do next. The beasts we encountered are not particularly powerful. Maybe the situation outside is not as bad as we thought, and Luo Hua City still exists." Di Fui looked around his surrounding. The tree they stood on was the highest in the vicinity, and they could see miles ahead. He could see that deep in the woods, there were all kinds of beasts that emerged from time to time. Once these beasts came together, it was a bloody battle. The moon makes them excited. Look at their eyes. They are blood red. Fortunately, they are much weaker than the fierce beasts in the valley. One person can deal with 2 or 3 beasts here individually. What I worry is if they attack in groups. Gu Zigius analyzed. "Don't worry, these fierce beasts are too affected by the moon. They will have no energy during the day. Most of them will find a place to rest. Even if a few beasts attack, we can deal with it. However, I'm concerned that something else will happen." Di Fui suddenly noticed that Gu Shijio was quiet. She felt an inauspicious breeze come out from the ground, and the air suddenly became quiet. The weather was hot, so Gu Shijio had already sweated, but when the inauspicious breeze turned up, she had a shudder, and felt that the temperature around seemed to have dropped by a few degrees. Gu Shijio could tell that something bad was about to happen. She held her breath, and subconsciously looked at the direction in which the mist began to appear. There was a bloody red object looming in the fog. As it was still rather far away and blocked by fog, Gu Shijio could not see the appearance of the bloody red object. She was only instinctively aware of the danger. "Nah!" The bloody red object suddenly screamed. The sound was sharp with a strange pitch. It shook their eardrums vigorously. Gu Zigius' goosebumps were coming out. Di Fui lifted his sleeves to cover her ears. Chapter 2162. Cooperation 3. However, the other beasts in the forest were not so lucky. After the screaming, these beasts quickly stood still. They were shivering, but they did not dare to run. The blood-red object inside the mist flew toward the beasts in an instant. Only the screams of countless beasts were heard in the mist. After the mist disappeared, there were only skeletons left in the place where the beasts were standing. Gu Zigius' facial expression changed. What was this? It was too powerful. She suddenly felt that Di Fui's body grew stiff as well, and he seemed to be a little bit nervous. She turned her head slightly and saw that Di Fui was staring in one direction. There was a flash of light at the bottom of his eyes. Was he excited? "What is that? Do you recognize that thing?" Di Fui shook his head. "I don't." "What are you excited about?" "There is spiritual power in this object. Can you wait here? I will go and take it down." Di Fui leaped from the tree and flew toward the mist like an arrow. In just a moment, Gu Shijio found that Di Fui and the bloody red object had been entangled together. Gu Shijio bit her lips and teleported to the place. However, she kept a distance between the two of them. She landed at a location nearby to watch them fighting, and in case if Di Fui was defeated, she could go forward and take over. At the very worst, she could teleport both of them to safety. As she was close to the scene, she could finally see the appearance of that beast clearly. Her heart jumped slightly. What species was this? This beast looked like a pig, but it was not a pig. Its body was round and fat like a pig. It had spots on it like a leopard. It even had the head of a dragon and a pair of small shredded wings. Every time its wings flapped, there was a layer of mist around it. The mist was not white, but light blue. Whenever the mist touched something, it would dry up and die. This mist was undoubtedly poisonous. Gu Shijio was worried that Di Fui might be in grave danger, so her eyes had never moved away from him. Perhaps Di Fui had taken anti-poison pills before approaching it. He did not seem to be afraid of the poison. He was flying around the bloody red monster. Under the moonlight, his large robe fluttered like a wave, and with his handsome face, every single move he made looked graceful. Even though he looked elegant, his attacks were powerful and forced the bloody red monster to retreat. Gu Shijio breathed a sigh of relief. By looking at this situation, he could settle this beast without her. The battle was intense. It made Gu Shijio felt dizzy, so she retreated to a few trees behind to avoid being affected by the momentum created from the battlefield. After a quarter of an hour, Gu Shijio frowned slightly. The skin of this monster was too thick. The sword in Di Fui's hand had cut on the monster's body more than 10 times, but there was no wound at all. This kind of creature should have a weak point. Gu Shijio pondered in her heart, and her eyes were fixed on the monster instead. After a moment, she yelled, "Try to stab it in its left eye." This monster allowed Di Fui to stab it at anywhere on its body, but when Di Fui was about to stab its left eye, it would subconsciously block it. Unfortunately, Gu Zijia's scream had attracted the monster's attention. The monster screeched and rushed toward Gu Shijio. Even though it was fast, Gu Shijio had her teleportation to protect her. The monster thought that it had caught the girl with its claw, but all it could find was a lot of leaves. Chapter 2163, Cooperation 4. A pair of eyes turned around to look for the fragrant little girl. "Pig, I am here." The monster turned its head and saw Gu Shijio standing in another leafy tree with a smile. "Yeah." The monster attacked again. When its claw was going to tear Gu Shijio apart, it did not expect that a cold light would shine into its eyes. "Poe!" The cold light hit the monster's left eye, and blood gushed out of the monster like a waterfall. The monster crashed on the ground. After its body twitched a few times, it finally stopped moving. Gu Zijius was elated by their success. "Our cooperation is quite good, right?" She was going to go down and check on her trophy. Di Fui pulled her back. "Wait." What was he waiting for? Gu Shijio wondered, but she soon understood. Di Fui plucked off a twig and threw it down at the monster. The monster that was apparently dead suddenly jumped up and bit the twig. The twig was instantly crushed into powder. Gu Shijio was shocked. This thing actually knows how to pretend to be dead. The monster then crashed to the ground again. Di Fui finally spoke. It was not pretending to be dead. He brought Gu Shijio down the tree. At this point, Gu Shijio witnessed Di Fui familiarly cut off the head of the monster and remove a red crystal from its head. The red crystal was like a red sun reflecting a red flame around it. From this red crystal, Di Fui finally felt the long-lost spiritual power that was hidden from this land. This crystal actually contained a lot of spiritual power, so Di Fui was relieved. He put the crystal on his palm and then pulled Gu Zijia's palm over. "Come, let us absorb it together." This red crystal contained a lot of spiritual power, and Di Fui estimated that after the absorption, he could restore the spiritual power that he had consumed today. Even though it would not be able to restore him to his original level, at least he would be able to open his storage space again. Gu Zijia's eyes flashed slightly. Suddenly, she withdrew her hand. "No, you absorb it." Di Fui was shocked and looked at her. The spiritual power on this red crystal is extremely pure. I have tried it, and there is no evil influence. You can absorb it by using the method I have taught you. There will not be any side effects. Gu Shijio shook her head and looked at him. No, you have used up a lot of spiritual power today, and you can't even open your storage space. You should restore your energy from this red crystal. Di Fui remained silent. He did not expect her to be so observant. She was still very sharp. He smiled, held her hand, and said in a firm voice, Shijio, we can't get out of this disaster if everyone only relies on me. You need to be stronger too. Come on, absorb it with me. This was a fair point. Hence, Gu Shijio would not refuse anymore. She absorbed the spiritual power from the red crystal together with Di Fui. After half an hour, the bloody red crystal became gray, and the gloss on the stone had disappeared. Gu Shijio and Di Fui opened their eyes at the same time. Di Fui looked at her red cheeks and asked, How do you feel? Gu Shijio took a breath and answered in one word, Great. She could feel the spiritual power circulating in her body. Her veins were revitalized, and her body was also lighter by a few pounds. Chapter 2164. Baby, you can go now. She smiled and gently stretched out her fingers. A flame was issued from her hand and burnt the branches on the ground. It was really magical. It was more convenient than using charcoal. Di Fui quickly grabbed her hand. It is not easy to get spiritual power. Don't waste it. Gu Zijia's eyes fell on the dead monster. I didn't expect this thing to have spiritual power. Let's hunt a few more. If we look hard enough, perhaps we can even find the nest of the monster. Di Fui could not help but laugh. This beast looks like a rare one. I bet that there won't be another beast of this kind in a 20-mile radius. Well, Gu Shijio still believed in Di Fui. She grabbed his hand and said, If that's the case, let's go to Luohua City. When she finished her sentence, she had teleported together with him. Since the old patriarch had already told them the direction in advance, coupled with the fact that Gu Shijio was also very good with directions, she was not afraid to travel quickly. When she did not have any spiritual power, she could only teleport 2 or 3 miles together with Di Fui. However, with spiritual power, her physical fitness had improved significantly, so she was able to teleport 10 miles at once. Of course, the two of them still encountered fierce beasts along the way. If she could avoid them, she would definitely stay away. Otherwise, they would just kill them. There was another benefit of teleportation, which is that she could travel in a straight line. This allowed them to move faster. After 4 consecutive teleports, she had taken both of them entirely out of the mountainous area. Gu Shijio looked around, and her heart sank. The place where she was standing should be the main road. However, it was also covered by bushes of wild grass. It was similar to the situation in the mountains. There was no trace of human activity. This place was about 40 miles away from the so-called Luohua City. If Luohua City still existed, this place should not be abandoned. Gu Shijio studied her surroundings and realized that the trees on both sides were raging like the primeval forest, and all the branches were also extended to the sky, like the inverted mop. It was hardly different from the mountain. In fact, all the animals were close to a state of madness as well. From time to time, they could hear the raging sound of beasts and the sounds of chewing teeth. Fui, do you think Luohua City still exists? Gu Shijio felt a sense of hopelessness. Di Fui was also studying his surrounding. He had just taken down a wild wolf with a big sturdy knife. He looked at it and sighed a little. I don't know if Luohua City still exists, but there are still other people in the world, and they are living in the city. Gu Shijio looked at the knife in his hand. Her heart moved a little. The style of his knife was quite similar to the collection of the old patriarch. However, the old patriarch's knife had been used for more than 100 years and very seriously worn out. This knife seemed to be entirely new, and the blade was still extremely sharp. The old patriarch said that the knives in this world were made with bronze and forged by a little bit of iron. If they had not been used, the blade would have a layer of copper rust on the surface. The longer the idle time, the more rust there would be. Chapter 2165. Baby, you can go now, too. The knife in Di Fui's hand was a little bit rusty. Evidently, this knife had been abandoned for only a brief period. Since Di Fui found it on the ground, there must be a city in this world. After they made this presumption, Gu Shijio breathed a sigh of relief, and she was certainly more motivated. She once again grabbed Di Fui's hand and said, "What are we waiting for? Let's go to Luohua City." Unexpectedly, Gu Shijio and Di Fui had fallen into a trap. There was a tiger in the trap as well, so when Gu Shijio and Di Fui landed, they stepped on the back of the tiger. The tiger growled and turned its head. It wanted to bite the two of them. Di Fui was quick to react. However, when he wanted to knock the tiger out cold, he suddenly felt a chill in the air, and an inauspicious influence emerged from the ground. This was a very familiar feeling. Di Fui pulled Gu Shijio close to him. The spiritual pig appears again. When he finished his sentence, a bloodied pig monster appeared again. All of a sudden, the net was heading for a crash on the ground. When it came to a critical time, Gu Zijia's teleportation technique was still the best. Before the big net landed, she had teleported away together with Di Fui and landed on a tree nearby. They looked down again and found that the pig and the tiger were in the middle of the big net. Catch it. Grab it. The Chinese alligator is caught. We are finally safe. We have caught it. We still need to kill it and get the spiritual crystal. Behind a big tree, 12 people emerged. These people dressed alike. All of them dressed in dark blue robes and were apparently from the same apprenticeship. There were 10 men and 2 women. They all yielded the same weapons. It was clear that these people practiced martial arts. The way they walked was very light but with strength. When they came out from their hiding places, they were very agile. Gu Zijia's eyes fell on the weapons of these people. They were carrying sharp bronze swords that were the same as the one in Di Fui's hand. These people also saw Gu Shijio and Di Fui. However, they were occupied with more urgent matters. They spent all the energy on the pigs that were inside the net. Only one of them rapidly glanced at Di Fui and Gu Shijio on the tree. He shouted, "We found this female pig dragon. You should not steal from us." Di Fui was gently leaning on the big tree. He smiled and responded, "You do not have to worry. We are not going to steal from you." The man was dazzled by his smile and stared at him for a while. However, he quickly shifted his attention elsewhere because the female pig dragon that was caught had already gone crazy. This Chinese alligator was apparently smaller than the one that Di Fui killed, but it was still very fierce. The tiger that was in the same net had been eaten, and only its skeleton was left behind. The creature used its teeth to bite the net. It ejected poisonous liquid to erode the net too and also used its claw to tear it. However, this was obviously a special net. The materials were unusually strong. Chapter 2166. Baby, you can go now. 3. The Chinese alligator tossed and turned a few times but still did not get rid of the net. Of course, the 8 men who had been pulling the net were also very exhausted. They were being dragged around the place by the Chinese alligator. At the same time, the other 4 continued to stab the Chinese alligator with their swords whenever they had the opportunity. The 12 of them cooperated well, were definitely well trained. Gu Shijio looked down for a moment and then turned to ask Di Fui, "Are we not helping them?" It was rare to see other humans, so she was curious about them. The Chinese alligator had severely drained the 12 of them, so she could not bear to see it and wanted to help. Di Fui shook his head slightly. "No, let us observe first." It was difficult to read people's hearts. Those people were very alarmed by their presence. If they went down to help now, it could make the situation worse for everyone. His observation was very sharp, and in a matter of time, he could see that the 12 people could not hold the creature down. After an hour, they were exhausted, but they did not leave any wound on the pig. Gu Shijio had kindly hinted to them about the left eye of the pig, but they could not stab it even though they had fought very hard. These 12 people were considered as masters. They could easily cut down a huge tree. However, this Chinese alligator's skin was thicker than a trunk. Furthermore, it continued to roll on the ground crazily, which made life very difficult for the 8 people trying to hold the net together. The palms of the 8 people had been bleeding. The Chinese alligator was getting frustrated. Suddenly, it screeched in a very high pitch, and its 2 little wings flapped. It was so powerful that it carried the 8 people who were pulling the net up into the sky. These people were shocked. The other 4 people quickly ceased their attacks on the creature and started to help the 8 men. The assistance of the 4 men managed to help bring the creature down to the ground again. However, it rolled over and dragged the 12 people down with it. One of the women was weak, so her hand slipped, and the net came out of her palm. The pig was extremely intelligent. It immediately turned toward this person and rushed over to her. That woman screamed as she saw a big mouth headed toward her. The sharp teeth of the beast were just right in front of her, and she subconsciously closed her eyes. Just as she expected her head to be bitten, there was a sudden rush of wind around her. The woman felt as though she was flying for a moment, and then she landed on the ground. Stand properly. She subconsciously opened her eyes and found herself standing on a tree. Beside her was a woman in a light blue dress. The facial features of the woman beside her were beautiful, but she looked steady. Apparently, she was one of the people watching from the sidelines earlier. She had saved the weak woman. Thank you. The woman was shocked, and her voice was unsteady. Gu Shijio could save anyone in a brief second, just as she did for this woman. However, her attention was now focused on the fight below. The woman she saved also looked down, and her facial expression changed. That pig had already got out of the trap. The 11 of them were struggling to get to their feet as the ferocious beast was ready to attack. Its eyes were full of redness, and the hair on its body had stood up. Its wings had also expanded. Chapter 2167. Baby, you can go now for... Apparently, it was angry. Yeah. The pig screeched sharply. It flapped its wings, and red mist rolled up like a hurricane toward those people. Whenever the red mist passed, the trees were dried instantaneously, and they wilted. It was as if a hurricane of the 12th level blew them. The 11 people had just gotten themselves up. They were all stunned by what they had just witnessed. Naturally, they ran away to safety. Nonetheless, this creature had plans to kill the people who had schemed it. Its huge body fluttered toward one of the men. The man had just been blown by the hurricane and did not have time to get up. He knew for sure that he was about to meet his doom. The foot of this pig was the size of a dustpan. If its claw managed to hit him, he was going to be torn into pieces. This person wanted to dodge, but it was too late. However, suddenly, there was a flash of light in front of him, and he heard a slamming sound. Someone had kicked the pig's hip bone. The huge body of the pig had actually turned due to the impact of this attack. The person in distress took the opportunity to roll to safety. He had a second chance to live, and his heartbeat had quickened. Subconsciously he looked at that figure and found that he was the freeloader he had seen earlier. The man that had a beautiful face. This person actually had the courtesy to ask, "Is this pig still yours?" The man in distress was pale, and his companions were all trying to crawl to safety. They did not even dare to say they wanted to hunt the pig. They probably expected to die here. "This pig is yours. Please settle it quickly." The distressed man was the head of the gang and immediately made the most fitting choice. The rest also shouted, "We don't want it. You can have it. Help." Di Fui smiled. He turned back and gestured to Gu Shijio. "Baby, you can go now." Gu Shijio stumbled and almost fell down from the tree. She squinted at Di Fui. This guy had always called her using different names, Shijio, Little Shijio, and this time he even called her as his baby. Strangely, this name was very nauseating. Her heart was actually trembling as she felt an inexplicable pain. Of course, this pain lasted only a moment, and her attention was redirected to the pig. Help! The pig almost attacked another woman from the back. She was so scared and was heard screaming. Gu Shijio teleported to her side and pulled her up the tree. Before the woman was conscious, Gu Shijio had teleported once again. This time, she was directly in front of the pig. The sword in her palm was pointed at the pig. "Pig, your opponent is me." The girl in the light blue dress was flying around the Chinese alligator that had abused them miserably. In just a few minutes, the sword in the woman's palm had been inserted into the left eye of the pig. The pig screamed loudly and finally fell to the ground. Everyone was stunned. They had tried very hard to catch one themselves but were never successful. However, it was quickly killed by a woman who seemed to be weaker than them. Countless pairs of eyes fell on Gu Shijio, and everyone opened their mouths slightly but could not speak. Chapter 2168. You make the call. Gu Shijio was very smart. She had seen how Di Fui had retrieved the crystal from the creature earlier. Therefore, after cutting the pig's head open, a bright red crystal was taken out. The 12 pairs of eyes were staring at the red crystal. The group had really wanted this prized possession. Di Fui also glanced at the red crystal, which was much smaller than the one he had just consumed earlier. If he had to assess based on the outlook, the one he just consumed was a first-class product, and this one was a third-class product. Gu Shijio slid the crystal in her palm and looked at Di Fui. She asked him, "What is your plan?" Di Fui smiled. "It is retrieved by you. You make the call." Gu Shijio looked at the 12 people again. They all looked at the red crystal, and the eyes were full of envy. "What do you all think?" Gu Shijio looked around at everyone. The 12 people looked at each other. The head of the gang was pale and let out a chuckle. "It's yours." "Brother, what if we cannot catch a second pig?" A woman opened her mouth. "We can't enter the city. This time, we are dead." Another woman spoke in desperation. "We can hunt again. We will find a second one." The head of the gang tried to lift the confidence of the group, but the rest could not feel it. "Our time is running out. There is only 1 day left. Our Chinkuan net is also broken. What do we use to hunt it? It's over. We are going to die. The Zhuri clan is going to be extinct." These 12 people were clearly desperate. They did not even have enough strength to sit up. "I can give you this red crystal." A crisp voice was heard. This sentence immediately brought a sense of hope to the crowd. The head of the clan trembled. "What?" "I can give you this red crystal, but you have to answer a few questions. Once you answer properly, this red crystal is yours." Gu Shijio opened her mouth again, and the red crystal in her palm spun. The 12 people naturally agreed to this exchange. Therefore, Gu Shijio knew the following from their answers. Luohua City still existed, and it was rather developed. 123 years ago, the sky was gloomy, and a species had mutated. The flowers and trees were clearly affected and grew out of control. All the branches were extended to the sky. Some extremely ferocious monsters appeared in this world. These monsters mainly consumed other species in the Shura world as their food. The pigs that appeared were one of the monsters. The spiritual power between heaven and earth was getting lesser and finally dissipated completely. What was even more bizarre was that the moon in the sky was always round. There was no such thing as a full or non-full moon. The ordinary animals on the ground went crazy every night. They were much milder during the day, and most of them were hiding in cooler places to rest. There were still many practitioners in this Shura world. As they could not get the spiritual power that was needed for cultivation, many practitioners in different clans had become ordinary people. They had died of illnesses and old age. In addition to the ravages of these monsters, a lot of villages and towns had been destroyed, and many clans were getting extinct. Later, they did not know who actually found out that those extremely fierce monsters had a spiritual crystal which could replenish spiritual power. Therefore, the clan started to hunt these monsters. Chapter 2169. They received a second chance. The creature was extremely ferocious, and a special weapon was required to hunt it down. Many lives had been taken before one could even be caught. Furthermore, with such a barren environment, people could no longer plant crops as the weeds would have prevented it. Thus, there was completely no grains available, and the villagers could only struggle to survive by hunting for their food. To make matters worse, there was a blood rainfall once every 10 days in this realm. The rain was highly corrosive to the extent it could destroy normal houses and even some of the caves. Only those houses protected by wizardry barriers were protected. Nonetheless, that was not their only threat. There was a flood of countless monstrous blood bats that sucked the blood from any living things in just a blink of an eye. The Joueri clan was once a relatively good clan. However, there were only 12 members left since the misfortune. It was only when they gave shelter to a vagrant that they found out that not all the cities have waned. 9 new cities were created in recent years, and all of the people there were living normal lives. Such cities were considered a paradise to the people who suffered every day. Therefore, the members of the Joueri clan decided to move to Luo Hua City, which was nearest to their clan. Their clan was about 600 miles away from Luo Hua City, and 12 of them made it after 6 days of travel. Unfortunately, they found out that they were required to pay spiritual stones to enter the city. The only other acceptable scenario was if they possessed a special ability. Otherwise, there was no way for them to enter the city. As a result, hunting monsters with spiritual stones in their body was their only option. Fortunately, they had all the necessary equipment, and they knew there was a Chinese alligator around Luo Hua City since they were very experienced in hunting. After searching for 3 days, they finally found a Chinese alligator. Unfortunately, all of them almost died. Nevertheless, since Gu Shijio got all the information she wanted, she lifted her hand and tossed the spiritual stone to the leader. "Here you go." The leader could not believe it when he got the stone. After all, the information Gu Shijio wanted was not a valuable secret. He even had his doubts about whether or not Gu Shijio would keep her promise, as he believed that she might not give him the spiritual stone even after he told them the truth. To his surprise, they received a second chance. "Dear benefactor, are you going to Luo Hua City? Why not follow us? 1 spiritual stone is enough for 20 people to enter the city." Gu Shijio shook her head and added, "Indeed, we want to enter the city. However, there are 138 of us." She then briefly told them about her tribe. The leader remained silent at first, but then turned around and had a discussion with his junior apprentices. In the end, they proposed, "Benefactors, we are willing to go back to your village and bring all your people to Luo Hua City." Although the kung fu that the 12 of them possessed were no match for Di Fui and Gu Shijio, they were much better than the villagers Gu Shijio wanted to save. Besides that, they have been living outside the forest and knew many ways to protect themselves. It was good insurance for the kids and old folks if they could be their guardians. Hence, Gu Shijio agreed to the proposal. Chapter 2170. Has it turned into a fairy? There would be a blood rainfall at midnight tomorrow, and the villagers' rest station was 80 miles away from Luo Hua City. The journey would be full of obstacles. Ferocious beasts would probably attack them along the way. If the villagers could depart tomorrow morning, they might be able to arrive in Luo Hua City at night. Hence, they did not have much time. Gu Shijio had a discussion with Di Fui about the best way forward. However, it seemed like it was best that they go separate ways. Di Fui would hunt for Chinese alligators and retrieve their spiritual stones to enter the city. Meanwhile, Gu Shijio would bring the 12 hunters to meet the villagers and bring everyone out tomorrow morning. The 12 of them knew the strategies to find the Chinese alligators. Hence, they quickly shared it to Di Fui without any delay. With these strategies and Di Fui's capabilities, it was not difficult for him to kill a few Chinese alligators in a day. Di Fui preferred to search for the Chinese alligators after sending Gu Shijio and the 12 of them back to the village. After all, Gu Shijio could not perform teleportation with all 12 of them. It was very risky, especially since many ferocious beasts often attack people at night. He was worried about her safety. Gu Shijio did not manage to change his mind. Hence, they followed his plan. Therefore, all of them returned to the village together. Fortunately, these 12 disciples of the Joueri clan were all experts, so they managed to stick to the schedule. Certainly, they were attacked by some ferocious beasts along the journey, but they managed to defeat them. Coupled with the assistance from Gu Shijio and Di Fui, they had a generally smooth journey. The oldest disciple of the Joueri clan, also known as Zhao Fengxing, was a very passionate, helpful, and loyal person. While journeying together, he sighed. "I cannot believe that you were trapped in the forest. Honestly, I heard that the beasts are more ferocious as you go deeper into the forest. There are also many vicious monsters. A number of experts did not even return since they entered the forest. There were about 12 to 13 miles to go when Zhao Fengxing said that. Gu Shijie was not too pleased with what she had heard. Coincidentally, right after he finished talking, black smoke rose from the ground in the distance. Also, the temperature of the surrounding immediately turned chilly. They could see a shadow in the size of a small hill behind the smoke. Someone screamed, "Gosh! It is carrying 2 lanterns. Has it turned into a fairy?" Gu Shijie quickly drew her sword. "How does it look like lanterns?" "It is the eyes of a monster." Suddenly Di Fui shouted, "Run!" When he finished shouting, the dark shadows suddenly exploded and spread all over the place. It turned into more than 10 beams of black smoke that were aimed at the group. Gu Shijie managed to see it more clearly now. She realized that it was not just one monster but hundreds of flying monsters. It looked like an insect, but its size was definitely much larger. Each of them was as big as a man with a pair of shiny sickles. Gu Shijie did not know its name, but she was definitely concerned. They might be able to win the battle if there were only 3 to 5 of them. However, there were a few hundred. Chapter 2171. Return to the city. Let's run then. Gu Shijie was leading the group while the 12 of them were in the middle. Di Fui was right behind them. The 12 of them had used all their energy to run. Fortunately, they were running at a very high speed, hence, the bugs did not catch them. However, those monsters were extremely stubborn and did not stop chasing after them. Suddenly, Gu Shijie stopped when she saw a cave in the distance. The rest station was just around the corner, and there were many young kids and old folks there. She could not imagine the consequences if they lured the monsters along. Therefore, she turned around as she grabbed her sword tightly. She was going to fight and kill as many monsters as she could. Before she managed to open her mouth, she realized that the wave of dark shadows paused behind them. To their surprise, the monsters stopped chasing them and only circled at the same spot, making an irritating noise. Countless of red eyes stared at Gu Shijie and the group. However, they did not dare to move forward as though there was a taboo. A moment later, the monsters gathered and formed a big pile of black smoke again and retreated. In just a blink of an eye, there was no sign of them at all. Everyone was sweating from the run, but they finally could heave a sigh of relief. It was indeed a surprise that they managed to escape a fierce battle in such an easy way. There were many wild animals in the forest that had been eaten alive by the bugs. Terrifyingly enough, many of their skeletons were still in a running or fighting posture when the locusts bit them. Looks like there is something the monsters fear about in the cave. Zhao Fengxing wiped away his sweat on his forehead. Gu Shijie suddenly thought about the red mist in the valley. Perhaps the monsters were afraid of the creature? She was surprised that the rest station was an unknown safe house. Thus, it might be a good place for them to settle down if they could not enter the city. However, that was not her primary plan. Although the rest station was free from the bugs, there was no cover or shade. The villagers had nowhere to hide when the blood rainfall comes. Hence, they had to go to the city. Gu Shijie and the group finally passed through the cave and saw the villagers. Before Gu Shijie had left the village earlier, she instructed the villagers not to leave the rest station despite their curiosity. The patriarch managed to keep them all at bay. Only Tai Dan and Tai Nyo were anxiously keeping their eyes on the entrance and finally heaved a sigh of relief when they saw Gu Shijie return. Gu Shijie brought the 12 of them to see the patriarch, and everyone was generally very happy. Since 12 more people were joining the team, they had higher hopes of making it to the city. The next morning, everyone began to leave the rest station after sunrise to depart to Luo Hua City according to Gu Zijie's plan. The number of monsters was indeed lesser during the day. Coupled with the protection from so many experts, all the ferocious beasts were easily defeated. Finally, they have arrived at Luo Hua City during sunset. As the villagers looked at the high green wall at the entrance and the soldiers that surrounded it, they cried and shed their tears of joy. Males and females below 30 years old are allowed to enter the city. "We are sorry, But for the adults above 30 years old, Luohua City does not have extra food for incapable people. That was what the guard said with an icy tone, as if pushing the villagers who have struggled to come here into the hell. Luohua City was secured with a circle of very tall walls. The gate was made of solid metals, which made it exceptionally strong. The metals would remain rust-free even after years of exposure to the air. Moreover, it had the ability to work like a magnet to attract all the weapons of the intruders. Both sides of the gate were tightly sealed at the moment. There was only a small entrance visible in the corner. Only one person could enter at a time. Find authorized novels in Webnovel faster updates. Better experience, please click www.webnovel.com for visiting. There was a wide and deep river surrounding the city walls. Instead of being a moat filled with water, it contained fiery red molten lava that would melt the skin and bones of anyone who unfortunately fell into the river. When Gu Zijia's group approached the city wall, it was already late in the evening, and the place was getting dark very rapidly. Right behind them, wild beasts were growling loudly as the night started to fall upon them. On top of the walls, guards were looking down at them from above, as if looking at a group of beggars. Go! Go! Our city will only accept people with great strength or special ability. Beggars are not welcomed here. You should leave now. The clan leader was not ready to give up. He took 2 courageous steps forward and said, "Sir, with all due respect, we used to be the citizens of Luohua City. However, we were trapped in the outskirts due to some unfortunate incident. We are simply returning now. I do not care who you are. If you wish to enter, you must have the spiritual crystals. 1 crystal for every 20 entries, not a stone less." The unscrupulous guards tempted to harass these villagers with ragged clothes. They also did not believe that these people would be able to offer any spiritual crystals. Indeed, the clan leader had nothing to offer. Di Fui was still out there hunting. Last night, after making sure that Gu Shijio and the rest of the people were in safe hands, he left promptly after a short rest. All alone, he ventured into the dangerous land to obtain the spiritual crystals. This morning, Gu Shijio started escorting the villagers. About 10 miles away from the city, they realized that there were fewer greens. The more they approached the city, the milder the beasts they encountered. Hence, there was barely any danger left in the journey. There were many experts, Zhao Fengxing for example, to secure the perimeter. Gu Shijio was worried for Di Fui, for it was already late in the evening and he had yet to return, so she gave the villagers a few reminders and left to search for her man. Therefore, the clan leader was the one who took the lead at the moment. Zhao Fengxing was at the back of the troop, initially. Upon hearing the fuss at the walls, he stepped forward and looked up confidently at the guards. "Don't worry, we will present the spiritual crystals to you, not one less." Zhao Fengxing had seen the way Di Fui and Gu Shijio fought in battles, so he was confident about their return with the crystals. The guard at the city gate recognized Zhao Fengxing. He had been here at the gate with his men a few days ago. The guard gave him a suspicious look and started judging. "When did you start mixing around with these beggars? Are you trying to use these beggars to gain our sympathy to let you into the city because you have failed to obtain the spiritual crystals? Let me tell you, there is no chance at all." Zhao Fengxing refused to argue with these arrogant guards. He retrieved a red crystal from his bag. "We already have one." The glistening red stone shone with great luster. The guard took a careful look at the crystal and said, "All right, you are capable. All 12 of you may enter, but not the rest of the group." "Didn't you say that 1 stone could permit the entry of 20 people? Zhao Fengxing questioned. "Right, you can pick 8 people from this group of beggars to come in with you." Zhao Fengxing heaved a sigh of relief before selecting 20 women and children to enter the city. These people were generally weaker, so they eagerly needed a place to rest after a long, dreadful day of travel. Chapter 2173, A Group of Beggars, 2. Surprisingly, the guard went against his words after seeing the selection of the first 20 people. Even with the spiritual crystal, only the adults within the permitted age range can enter. All men below the age of 50 and women below the age of 30 are allowed to come. The elders and the children below 12 years of age are not welcome. The city has no place for useless people. The guards started insulting them. The people were startled by his hurtful demand. Out of all the people there, about half the troop was in the permitted range. There were about 30 women above 30 years of age and 30 children below 12 years of age. These people were either the parents of the strong, eligible men or their children. If abandoned, they would have no chance of survival. Soon, some people started sobbing helplessly. Some of the elders were furious. The children held on tightly to their parents' clothes, as they were too afraid to be abandoned. Meanwhile, the clan leader was obviously infuriated. What kind of rule is this? How can you be so ruthless to these innocent people? Where is the governor of the city? I want to meet the governor. The guard gave him a laugh. Our governor is a man of nobility. A beggar like you is not entitled to meet someone as noble as him. The guard then demanded impatiently, "Are you going to come into the city? Make your decision now. The gate will be completely closed in an hour. You will not be able to enter, even if you change your mind." Zhao Fengxing looked up and saw the signs of red clouds emerging amidst the darkness. As soon as these red clouds gathered, the rain of blood would fall. The rainwater was not corrosive like acids that could erode anything once touched. Instead, it was more like a disease. A droplet would cause the skin to rot. The worst part was that it was incurable. The only way to avoid contact was to hide in a deep cave. Furthermore, it is preferable that each individual still shield their bodies with a layer of enchanted animal skin to be completely safe from the rain. Zhao Fengxing predicted that the blood rain would start pouring in an hour. He could not help but look into the distant woods and wonder why the duo had not shown up. If they were here, they would probably figure something out. Fortunately for the villagers, Zhao Fengxing was someone with personal loyalty for his friends. After a brief discussion with his junior apprentices, they announced proudly, "We will either go or stay behind together with these villagers. We will not enter the city at the moment. I am the son of the governor, Hua Zhichuan. About a century ago, I left to hunt with a group of friends, and we were unfortunately trapped in the depths of the valley. These people are the descendants of my friends. If you tell the governor about my identity, I believe that he will let us in." The clan leader finally uncovered his family background. He could tell that these men from the city were well equipped with spiritual power. With the support of spiritual power, one's lifespan could be greatly increased. As the governor of the city, his father used to have his spiritual power at level 7, who happened to be the man with the greatest power in the city at the time. He was expected to live up to 500 years. Before Hua Zhichuan left the city, the old governor was only 50 years old. His father would be 180 years old by now, so he should be around and was most probably the present governor of the city. His father loved him very much as a child. If he knew about the return of his beloved son, he would definitely let everyone else in. Nonetheless, the guard gave him a sarcastic reply, "I do not care if you are called Hua Zhichuan or Yi Zhichuan. I have never heard of any of your names." He gave Hua Zhichuan another judgmental look before adding another scornful remark. "From your old and shady look, I think you are more than 100 years old. Our governor is a young man at the peak of his youth. How can he possibly have a son as old as you? If you want to lie, you have to lie properly. Moreover, our governor's surname is not Hua." Chapter 2174. A Group of Beggars. 3. Hua Zhichuan was shocked. "Isn't the governor Hua Fengshu?" Hua Fengshu was his father's name. "Of course not. Let me tell you. The name of our governor is Yi Huiling, also known as Governor Yi." Hua Zhichuan could not process the name of that complete stranger. In fact, he had never heard of him. He did not know that someone else replaced the governor of the city. What about his father, then? Where is the old governor, Hua Fengshu? Hua Zhichuan needed to find out. The guard rolled his eyes in impatience and said, "How would I know? He is probably long dead. I have been here for more than 80 years, and I have never heard about Hua Fengshu." Hua Zikin's face darkened. Perhaps his father was already long gone. Hua Fengshu used to be the pride of the entire city. Everyone knew about him and treated him with respect as if he were a savior to the people. He never knew that his father would end up long gone. Hua Jichuan was obviously devastated by the sudden news. He stood, trembling. Chun Chao quickly supported him to make sure he stood steadily. Annoyed, she took a look at the men on top of the walls. "Clan leader, why don't we fight our way in? We cannot abandon our uncles, our aunts, our grandparents, and our children," she suggested in a hoarse voice. Hua Jichuan observed the men from below and shook his head in disapproval. "We shall not fight. There are weapons everywhere along the wall. Once triggered, the arrows will be released." There were many secret openings along the walls, and there was one archer behind every opening with his bow and arrows ready. Moreover, they had not let the bridge down to connect them across the river. There was no way they could fight their way in. The guards on the city wall were brutal. Hua Jichuan and his men tried to negotiate politely with them, but to no avail. Instead, they became more and more impatient. "I am not interested in this discussion whatsoever. Leave now. If I hear another word, I shall release the arrows." Swiftly, many arrows could be seen aiming at them from the secret openings. The tip of the arrows was dark blue, indicating that it was obviously poisoned. Under the circumstance, the villagers dared not move. Zhao Fengxing and his men decided to keep their grounds too. Minutes ticked by. Soon, 15 minutes had passed. Di Fui and Gu Shijiao were still nowhere to be seen. The villagers were starting to worry. They did not know how long they were going to wait for their return. Just when they were anxiously waiting, they heard someone running toward them from the woods. In the blink of an eye, they saw about 20 men running through clouds of dust. Not far behind, hundreds of wild animals that looked somewhat mutated were also running toward them. There were lions, tigers, and bears. These wild animals were double the size of how they usually were and charged with great ferocity. Their speed was unusually fast, causing gusts of wind along their way. "We have the spiritual crystals. Open the gate. Open it now." The leader shouted out loud to the men on top while raising the red crystals in the air to prove his words. These men had obviously been through a tough time to obtain the spiritual crystals. Many of them were injured with bloodstains all over their clothes. The guards could see the crystal clearly. With a wave, he commanded for the release of the bridge. While the bridge was slowly dropping, the wild animals were already in close proximity. Fortunately, the 20 men had good kung fu. Before the bridge was fully released, they took a leap into the air and landed on the bridge. Quickly, they ran towards the city. Chapter 2175. A group of beggars. 4. The wild animals knew that they could not reach the 20 men, so they decided to change targets. Instantly, they lunged towards the helpless villagers that waited for their entry at the gate. The villagers were scattered. While waiting, some decided to stand, others took their seats. Upon seeing the beasts approaching, they panicked. The beasts were smart enough to tell which ones were the weaker ones. Therefore, most of the beasts chose to attack women and children. Tai Dan, Tai Nyo, and their men were eager to save their family from the attack, so they fought the beasts to the best of their abilities to keep them away. Nonetheless, they were obviously outnumbered by the abundance of ferocious beasts surrounding them. Even with the help of Zhao Fengxing and his men, they were not able to keep everyone safe. The villagers were in a frenzied state to stay alive. The children were crying. The adults were screaming for help. It was complete chaos. Some were too nervous to care about which way to run. They ran towards the suspension bridge that was still slowly moving down. "You are not allowed on the bridge." A voice came from the top of the walls. Instantly, the guard commanded the release of an arrow, and it almost hit the foot of the first man. "I will kill anyone who steps foot on the bridge." The command of the guard was very alarming. Apparently, they were not willing to give in. After the entry of the 20 men with the spiritual crystal, the guard raised the bridge back up. Upon seeing their hopes slowly disappear, the villagers grew even more anxious. The array formation. Get back into formation. Zhao Fengxing was the only one with a clear mind at the time. The villagers recalled the array formation that they used during their escape from the valley and quickly scrambled back into formation. Unfortunately, since they were being attacked, it was difficult for them to do so. Zhao Fengxing and his men managed to slaughter a few beasts, but they were incapable of killing all of them. Helplessly, Zhao Fengxing watched as a lion pushed a child onto the ground and was about to dig its teeth into the child's throat. The adults around the child were busy fighting off the beasts, so none of them was able to rescue the child in time. Before the lion took its first bite, a shadow quickly flashed by and gave the lion a hard kick. The lion must have weighed a ton, but its heavy body floated in the air for a while before crashing into another tiger. Both hit the ground and rolled away. The child barely escaped death, so he was still suffering from shock. Astonished, he then started crying out loud. "Brother Stone! Brother Stone!" Hope returned to the villagers. Their eyes glistened with happy tears. "Stone! Brother Stone! Brother Stone, you are finally back." The rescuer who just emerged was Gu Shijio, but she was not alone. Di Fui was back too. However, he was fighting another beast at the moment. There was no time for chatter, so Gu Shijio made a few swift teleportations and started killing the beasts with the sword in her hand. They worked together perfectly and took down the beasts at every opportunity. The bodies of the slaughtered beasts lay motionless wherever they moved. Almost instantaneously, the beasts were beheaded. In a brief moment, more than half of the beasts were slaughtered. The rest of the beasts knew that the situation was not getting any better for them, so they left frantically. The duo's kung fu was extraordinarily good that even the guards on the wall were impressed. Everyone applauded for Gu Shijio and Di Fui as the beasts made their escape. The villagers also celebrated their survival. Chapter 2176. Entry into the city. Di Fui raised his hand to release 7 spiritual crystals into the air. They floated in a straight line and shone with sparkling light. He looked at the guards at the top of the wall and demanded, "Here are the spiritual crystals. Open the gate." It was the first time that the guards had seen so many spiritual crystals at once. The leader hesitated a little out of jealousy, but he still had to hold on to the same principle. Zhao Fengxing explained the situation to the duo. While he was explaining, many eyes focused intensely on Gu Shijio, as they were hopeful that her presence would change the situation for the better. Frowningly, Gu Shijio looked up into the sky and realized that the rain of blood would fall in half an hour. These people needed to enter the city as quickly as possible. She had made a promise to the deceased elders to make sure that everyone would arrive safely in Luohua City. After a moment of consideration, she took out a huge red crystal from her sleeve. It was 2 times bigger than the size of the ordinary crystals. If the red crystals were third-class gems, this one belonged in the second class. It was very rare to come across this size of crystal. One such crystal was equivalent to 3 ordinary ones. She showed the crystal proudly. "I would like to offer you another second-class gem in exchange for shelter for all of us." The guard fixed his eyes on the red crystal. He knew the type of gem very well. Hesitantly, he answered, "I cannot do so. I did not set the rule. The governor made it. I dare not do as I please. Please invite the governor. I would like to have a word." The guard smirked. "Lady, our governor will not simply see anyone. It is not easy for you to meet him. Unless what?" Di Fui interrupted coldly, and the guard was taken by surprise. The city guard was used to acting arrogantly. He was not highly positioned, but he bore an important responsibility. Everyone who entered or left the city must act according to his conditions. The people had to ingratiate with him in order to have a smooth journey. He was not afraid of anyone, except for a few members of the city's noble people. He gave Di Fui a lewd expression. "The governor has always been very considerate to beautiful women. The lady here is obviously very attractive. If she agreed to spend a night with the governor, he would probably..." Before he could finish, a hard slap in his face stopped him from making any offensive remarks. The figure of a man flashed before his eyes and slapped him so hard that he hit the floor. It could have easily sent him down the wall. The intruder obviously did not hold back his strength. Hence, The guard was caught in a daze after the slap. Dizzy, with his eyes blurred, all he could hear was a buzzing in his ears. Then, blood started oozing out from the corners of his mouth. The guard was surrounded by many of his men, but no one noticed the attacker. When they finally realized it, the guard was already in a daze. They had never expected that someone was brave enough to attack their leader. Driven by a sense of anxiety and indignation, they started surrounding the man in a defensive manner. The man raised his arm and put a sword across the guard's neck. "What were you saying? Would you like to repeat?" The voice of the man was soft as if conversing, but the guard was overwhelmed in insecurities from the icy tone of his voice. He had to surrender under the pressure of the sword on his neck. He tried very hard to focus on the appearance of the intruder. The man was in purple robes, with his face concealed under a mask. The guard could only see the man's dark eyes through the holes. At this very moment, his eyes were bent, as if smiling. The guard was expecting the intruder to be glaring at him with a serious face. Instead, the man gave him a warm smile in return. The sword was still hanging on the guard's neck, however. Slowly but surely, he started to feel the sword cutting through his flesh. The skin on his neck was slashed open, and blood emerged. As seconds passed, the pain became more and more unbearable. The whole process was as though someone was cutting meat with a blunt knife. It was slow but surely painful and frightening. The guards were shocked to the core. Their leader was in the hands of the intruder, so his followers dared not take another step forward. "Don't you do anything to him," they verbally warned. "The guard is the cousin of the governor. If he is hurt, your life will not be spared. Let him go. Release him now." The shouting continued. The guard was trembling in fear, but he still refused to keep his voice down. "I bet that you dare not do anything to me." Suddenly, he could not continue speaking. The sword buried another inch deeper into his neck. With the slightest movement in the right direction, the man's aorta would be slashed open. By then, his life would be surely gone. "What do you want?" The guards finally gave in. "Open the gate and let everyone through," Di Fui answered slowly. The guard's face was as pale as a sheet, but he decided to give his one last try. "I cannot do so. Can you see the archers at the wall? If you do not let me go, they will kill everyone down there." A few moments ago, he gave the archers a secret code to signal them. The archers responded immediately and were all in their respective positions. All their bows were armed with arrows. With a wave, the archers would release their arrows and kill every life on the ground. These archers were the best of the best in the city. Their precision and accuracy were, without a doubt, the best. The innocent villagers who did not have any armor were easy targets for them. Find authorized novels in Webnovel Faster Updates. Better experience, please click www.webnovel.com for visiting. Di Fui took a look at the bows of the archers and gave the guard another delightful smile. "Take a look at your so-called archers. Are there any arrows on their bows now?" The guard and his men were caught by surprise. Di Fui gave the guard a hand to help him turn around and observe the archers that he was so proud of. After a quick look, his expression changed instantly. A shadow had passed each and every archer. Everywhere the shadow was, a cry of horror burst forth. Soon, all the arrows were taken away. The shadow that stole their arrows moved too quickly for the archers to react. They could not even see the figure properly. The one who stole their arrows was certainly Gu Shijio. At this moment, she was standing casually on the edge of the wall, with a bundle of steel arrows in her hands. "Let the people in," she demanded authoritatively. The guard was finally concerned about his safety. "I will now send someone to notify the governor. If he agrees, I will let these people in at once." Gu Shijio observed the sky and realized that the downpour of the blood rain would occur in less than 15 minutes. The act of notifying the governor was only a waste of time. There was not enough time for his man to go to and fro. The guard was obviously trying to waste their time. Did he take the lives of the innocent as a joke? Di Fui gave him another smile and started putting more pressure on the sword. You can either open the gate now or get killed immediately before I open the gate myself. Which one would you choose? I am not in the mood for this conversation. On the count of 3, if you have not decided, I will decide for you. 1, 2, let them in. Let them in. Release the suspension bridge. The guard could not win the argument, so he quickly gave the orders to his men. The bridge was once again released, and the gates were wide open. More than 100 villagers ran across the bridge to enter the city as their refuge. After the entry of the villagers into the city, there were only 5 minutes left before the downpour. Di Fui kept his sword and tapped the guard on his shoulder with the back of his blade. Do not attempt to mess this up. Otherwise, I will give you a hard time. The intruder was too unpredictable, so there was no way one could guard against him. The guard could not care less about these people at the moment. He quickly commanded, "Close the gates. Open up the protective shelter." The soldiers on the wall were well trained. Quickly, they fell back into their positions and started carrying out their duties. The bridge was raised and the gates were shut. Some soldiers took control of some secret mechanisms to unleash a beam of white light that soon spread out like fleeting clouds. The scattered light started to move towards the city center to shield the entire area. A few moments later, light from varying directions covered up the entire city in a dome shield. Soon after the formation of the light dome, drops of blood rain that were as big as the size of a coin started pouring down. The rain hit the wizardry barrier in the shape of a light dome and slipped off its surface like an umbrella. Traces of blood were left behind, making the shield look somewhat terrifying. When the raindrops fell on the shield, the cracking sound was grating on the ear. Also, the dome shook unsteadily as a result of the downpour. It was a worrying sight. The villagers had just entered the city and were given the opportunity to witness the occurrence, so they all stood to gaze at the sky. Gu Shijio was busy observing her surroundings. She found the city rather odd. The buildings were mostly in the shape of a Mongolian yurt with wedge-shaped structures. The sizes of the yurts varied. Along the streets, there were shops. Generally, the buildings were quite glamorous. Different shops supplied different needs, for example, weapons, clothing, and daily necessities. Most of the shops that could be found anywhere else in the mortal world were present. Due to the odd appearance of the outsiders, many citizens filled the streets just to satisfy their curiosity. However, Gu Shijio also realized that these citizens did not dress very well. Most of the people had very ordinary garments made of coarse clothes, unlike the clan leader's description of the city, where more than half of the people could afford to dress glamorously and ride in the best carriages. What she saw appeared to be the exact opposite. He said that the people in the city lived and worked in peace and contentment. The people here, however, did not seem to lead a very good life. Most of the people looked tired, and their hands looked rough. Certainly, there were some rich men too, like the owners of the shops. Most of them were covered in silk and satin. Their faces had a healthy glow. Gu Shijio was observant enough to see that all these bosses seemed to be dressing up in the same style as if they were working for another superior leader. A few beautiful women who were finely dressed surrounded these men. Some dressed up quite ordinarily but were attractive enough to catch the men's attention. The women did not look very comfortable, though. There was a sense of terror in their eyes, like a group of frightened, helpless deer. Gu Shijio watched as a woman stepped carelessly onto one of the men's foot and was kicked harshly away. The woman did not even voice a sound. Unsteadily, she picked herself up and bowed before the man while knocking her head onto the solid ground to ask for his forgiveness. The man gave her another kick and demanded, "Go away." The woman hit the ground again with her head but was too scared to stand. She crawled and begged in a trembling voice. "Please, please don't send me away." Find authorized novels in Webnovel Faster Updates. Better experience, please click www.webnovel.com for visiting. The bossy man gave her a hiss before raising his foot to the woman. "Use your face to clean up the dirt." The woman was surprised, but she did it anyway. Still trembling, she obeyed his order and started cleaning the dirt on his shoes with one side of her cheek. Soon, her soft face was covered in different streaks of dust and dirt. Chapter 2179. The arrival of the governor. The man finally forgave her. He then threw a handkerchief at her and demanded, "Lousy woman, you'd better clean up your face." What a disgusting look. Gu Shijio could not contain her anger. Her fingers clenched in frustration, and she was ready to confront the rude man. The woman beside Gu Shijio quickly stopped her and warned, "Lady, stay out of trouble. These bosses are the men of the governor. If you get yourself involved in things that you should not be involved, you will be sent out of the city." Death was the only outcome if anyone was sent out of the city. Therefore, the people here chose to endure hardship even in the worst conditions. Gu Shijio took another look at life in the city. There were blacksmiths forging irons tirelessly. In the small building next to the workshops, some were busy weaving them. These workers dressed in the simplest way. They worked hard with their heads down while focusing completely on their work. Along the streets, soldiers patrolled the area every now and then. The segregation of their social statuses could be told apart based solely on the way the people dressed. The workers were the people of the lowest status in society. On the other hand, the soldiers were a class higher than the common people. Meanwhile, the leaders of the soldiers were in the upper class while their bosses were in the special upper class. The guard had suffered a great loss in pride under Di Fui's life-threatening sword. He wanted to take his revenge, but unfortunately, Di Fui fed him with a pill before releasing him and warned him not to do anything reckless, otherwise, he would have to suffer another painful lesson. The wound on the guard's neck required immediate medical attention, so revenge was not his priority. After giving commands to protect the city, he quickly left to treat his wound. Instead of having to handle the leader of the guards, the newcomers were greeted by another group of people. "Newcomers can come here to register yourselves." Some people started shouting in the streets. Soon, hundreds of soldiers emerged from the domed buildings behind the shops. They started surrounding the newcomers in a circle. Di Fui was astonished by these soldiers' spiritual power. He could tell from their appearance that their spiritual power was actually quite strong, at least at level 3 and above. The strongest one was the leader, who was already at level 4.5. The junior apprentices of Zhao Fengxing were at level 3 or so. Only Zhao Fengxing's spiritual power was more advanced. He was already at level 4. In the upper bound, these soldiers would not even be qualified to be servants. However, in the Shuro world, where spiritual power was scarce, these men's spiritual power was considered as extraordinary. These soldiers pushed the newcomers forcefully into one of the yards, like herdsmen leading their animals into the stalls. "Go! Go in there! Do as you are instructed." The lady who gave Gu Shijio a word of advice back then was actually a cleaner who looked like a woman in her 40s. After a brief exchange, Gu Shijio was surprised to learn that she was only 24 years old. From the lady, Gu Shijio found out more about the general life in the city. Basically, the governor was the most powerful man in the city with many men of great strengths to help him keep the city in order. Every newcomer would be required to pass a kung fu test. Those who were capable would be assigned to be the governor's followers. These qualified men would be gifted with the company of very beautiful women, glamorous houses, and scrumptious food. As long as they swore their loyalty to the governor, they could have whatever they asked for. The average ones would be assigned to be the soldiers. Their lives, at least, would be free from the concern of food and clothing. On the other hand, normal people would be enslaved and put into different corners. They had to work all day and night. Those who disobeyed them would be punished and die in exile. As for the women, they were the people of the lowest class in society. They would be assigned to different places and become either the concubines or servants of the rich. Their fate depended largely on their physical appearance. The unattractive women would be put in the brothels as prostitutes to provide free services for the soldiers. Any resistance would cost these women the price of either being scolded or being beaten to death publicly while naked. As expected, Gu Shijio was infuriated by the news. Announcing the arrival of the governor. A loud announcement came from afar. Soon, the people got onto their knees and bowed before him. Gu Shijio and Di Fui did not kneel, hence, The clan leader and the villagers followed their example. Zhao Fengxing pondered for a moment and decided to stop his junior apprentices from kneeling as well. Find authorized novels in Webnovel Faster Updates. Better experience, please click www.webnovel.com for visiting. The governor showed up in the most dramatic way that he possibly could. First of all, a light blue ship started sailing through the air in the sky above the city. There was no paddle to propel the body of the ship forward. Instead, it moved across by swinging two giant, wooden wings in the air. 4 young men were standing on the ship. All of them looked very handsome. The young men were seemingly protecting a man in purple robes. The man in purple robes was sitting at a white jade table. There was a set of chess pieces in front of him. With a chess piece in his hand, he looked like he was trying to win the game. Surrounding the ship were 8 celestial cranes, each carrying a lady in a white dress with her face covered under a veil. Some of these ladies were carrying layers of fine gauze in their hands. Others carried flower baskets to spread colorful petals along the way. The flowery scent filled the air long before the ship arrived. Gu Shijio was astonished. In a strange way, she somehow felt that it was a scene that she had witnessed some time before. The experience had definitely left an unforgettable impression on her. She fixed her eyes at the man in purple robes. Due to the distance, she could not really see his face with his head lowered. In a blur, she could only see a glistening red gem hanging somewhere on his head. Her heart started thumping in nervousness. Suddenly, someone caught her hand in a tight grasp. She turned around and met Di Fuya's pitch-black eyes. He looked at her with a tight smile before directing an audio message to her. Is he really that good-looking? Are you mesmerized? He was clearly jealous. His act of jealousy came as a heartwarming gesture to Gu Shijio. She leaned closer and responded, I feel that the scene is somewhat familiar to me. Di Fui squinted his eyes. He, too, felt that everything about the ship looked familiar, but he also found it uncomfortable to look at, like the entire scenario was actually an impersonation. The ship approached quickly and was already in the sky above the city. The ladies on the cranes waved their hands to release a roll of pale purple gauze from above. The soft fabric danced gracefully in the wind before reaching the ground. There, it served as a bridge between the ship and the land. The 4 young men quickly traveled down and landed on the ground. They kneeled before the ship. Welcome the arrival of Governor. The rest of the people followed. Welcome the arrival of Governor. The greeting ceremony was rather impressive. Along the streets, people were all kneeled. Only Gu Shijio and her group were still standing, thus creating a strong contrast. Some soldier approached them and commanded hoarsely, Why don't you kneel before the governor to welcome his arrival? Gu Shijio gave him a nonchalant reply, Is there any rule that says that I must kneel to greet the arrival of the governor? The soldier was speechless. Such a rule did not exist. What they did was a mere custom that was practiced over the years in society. Gu Shijio possessed a composure that was intimidating to others. Moreover, the soldier had seen how she and Di Fui fought against the ferocious beasts, so he was well aware that she could easily take his life. Her question left him speechless, for he was concerned that she would kill him. Before the soldier could ask anything more, a voice came from the ship above them. It is fine. I sympathize with their tragedies. Moreover, they are newcomers, so there is no need for them to follow the customs of Luohua City. His voice was magnetic, but his words sounded unnatural as if carrying a fake accent. Gu Shijio had a strong dislike for it. The spiritual level of this man is already at level 9, so we shall not act impulsively. There are many things about the city that are not right, so we need time to investigate the matters. Baby, you have to be patient, Di Fui directed an audio to her. Chapter 2181. The show was overly dramatic. Gu Shijio did not know what to say. Di Fui kept referring to her as his baby. However, she was also well aware that the man had many weird but practical ideas. Unlike her, the things that she could remember were limited to the events that she had been through over the past 6 months and nothing more. Hence, she thought that she should listen to him more often. Thus, she agreed with him. Nonetheless, She had to tell him how the man in the fluttering robes made her feel. I do not know why, but I do not like him very much. She found him a little annoying, yet in a familiar fashion. She tried hard to suppress her impulse to take the man down and give him a hard punch. What a coincidence! I do not like him very much either. Baby, you and I are really meant to be together, even our thoughts are in sync, Di Fui answered with a delightful smile. Meanwhile, he could not help but pinch her palm gently. You and your sweet talking. Gu Shijio made fun of him, when in fact she enjoyed his attention. She also thought that they were very compatible. She then fixed her eyes on their hands that were interlocked in a tight grip. It was heartwarming, like they had been doing this for many years. She would very much like to hold his hand for the rest of their lives. Therefore, they held their hands and watched the man as he continued to make his grand entrance. The man on the ship finally stood up. With a leap, he slid down the stripe that was waving in the wind. His purple robes were loose, so the soft fabrics danced in the air as he slowly made his way down, like a flag ruffling in the breeze. He looked somewhat elegant and unconventional. In the blink of an eye, he landed safely. However, instead of landing on the ground, he decided to step onto the backs of the 4 young men, who were still kneeling with their heads down. Gu Shijio could finally see the man's face clearly and was surprised. The man had a handsome face with delicate features. His eyebrows were shaped in a perfect arch, complementing his big, bright eyes. He had an attractive smile on his face, and his skin was soft and supple, fairer than any man should possibly be. On his forehead he was wearing a headband in the shape of a fox's eye. His was as beautiful as a lady, in fact. There was a soft feminine quality in his appearance. The man was the governor, also known as Yi Ling. After he landed, the 8 ladies subsequently got down from the floating ship. Quickly, they covered the ground with the petals before he stepped forward. Soon, all these ladies lay on the ground one by one, forming a line. Their white dresses formed a very strong contrast to the purple petals that glittered the land. From the back of the 4 young men, he took a step forward and stepped on the leg of the first lady in white. He slowly continued and stepped over her entire body. He then stepped onto the second lady, and the process continued. Gu Shijio was speechless. The show was overly dramatic. He did not respect these people at all. Despite her frustration, Gu Shijio still had a feeling that the governor was actually an impersonation of someone else with the same purple robes and fox-eye headband. She was too sure that she knew the man. Yi Ling walked slowly towards the duo and stopped about 2 meters away from them. Suspiciously, he stared at them before questioning their identity. Are you the leaders of the villagers? I am one of the villagers, Gu Shijio answered in an icy tone. Yi Ling gave her a half-smile and said, You certainly do not look like one. Your appearance is clearly different from them. He then took another look at Di Fui and asked, Who is this? My fiancé, Gu Shijio answered him loudly and clearly. Yi Ling squinted his eyes in disbelief. He observed Di Fui thoroughly and was offended. Di Fui only stood casually, but the man seemed to possess a greater aura than he did, even in a casual posture. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.